I'm Julie Michaels, and welcome to Homeward Bound.
I'm sitting in the railway station, got a ticket for my destination. On a tour of one-night stands, my suitcase.
Every soldier has a homecoming story, and for Doug Dobransky, as with many veterans, it often seems like just yesterday. From the rice paddies and jungles of South Vietnam to the highly competitive world of Hollywood photography, Doug joins me today to tell the story of this 40-year journey.
Home, when my thoughts escaping, home, when my music's playing, home, when my love lies waiting silently for me.
Doug, you're a Vietnam vet. What years did you serve?
Well, I was drafted and I went in on August of 1966 and went to Vietnam in the first week of January 67.
Now, what was the philosophy either in your family and or in the town about military service during the 60s?
My city was a little town in Pennsylvania, Butler, Pennsylvania, and because it was the 60s, that town was so small and it was so slow moving that it was really like it was still in the 40s. So anybody who ever got drafted or were called to do military service, it would be kind of a charge against your manhood if you didn't do your duty.
What was it actually like for you to say goodbye to your family before you left?
Well, when you're, all the hundreds of little towns in America have their young sons go to the airport with the family usually, and in my case, I went to the Youngstown, Ohio airport, and I had moved to Ohio by that time. And my whole family was there, my father, mother, my little sister Cheryl, aunts and uncles. There was probably a dozen or 15 people there, and I just went straight down the line and I said goodbye to every one of them. And I really felt like there was a possibility I wouldn't see any of these people again. And I came to my father and he was a little quivering in the chin. It was the first time I ever saw my father cry a little bit. And he just said, be careful. So we hugged and I said goodbye and I walked out of the door. This is when you had to actually walk to the plane. And it was snowing outside. It was January in Ohio. And I remember turning around and looking back and seeing all these people standing there, and I just thought, I think I might not see them again.
How did you feel when you began to realize, once you were over there, that you were getting short? I know that's a term coming to the end of your service.
Getting short is a very nice period. When you first get there, you realize that you've got a lot of time to do, and you're the new guy, and you don't know anybody, and you don't know very much. So, just even getting 1 or 2 months under your belt seems like you're making a little progress. But when you get to where you have 3 months left, 2 months left, and even 1 month left, you are starting to feel pretty supreme about yourself and about, you can feel yourself starting to lift a little bit.
When you were first coming in, and did you actually see anybody who was leaving when you were first coming in? And did you wonder what they did to survive? I know I've heard servicemen say the survival stare.
The classic was just like you see in the movies where we got off the plane and you get blasted, you get hit in the face with the heat, and there's a certain smell. And the people that are replacing you on the same plane are walking by, and you just lock eyes with these people, with these guys that have been there for a year. They've been there as long as when you were in high school going to your prom or going to your football games. They were still over here at that time. So when you get off the plane and you see these guys taking your place, you really want to know, please tell me what I need to know to, maybe a year from now I can be in your place. But there is an eye contact that's very, very profound.
What was it like the day you left Vietnam?
You know, I think everybody should think back on their lives and maybe come up with what are some of your best 3 or 4 days of your life. And I always sort of think that my last day in Vietnam was one of my most supreme days, because I remember being at Tan Son Nhut Air Base, and you know, there were certain areas where some body bags were being deployed, and there was new guys coming in, new replacements coming in with these brand new uniforms, and their boots were shined, and they looked just like unstained souls. You know, they were just, you know, clean as a Monday wash. And I was thinking to myself that I remember what it was like for me to be in that position a year earlier. And I felt like I was really at such a relaxed and peaceful place, because I just felt like, you know, I kind of feel a little proud of myself that I did something that was not an easy thing to do, and I've lasted this long, and now I get to go home. And it felt like it was a feeling that it was a certain amount of euphoria. There was also a certain amount of a little pride and self-respect, and I was just really thrilled to be knowing that pretty soon I would be back in my little town, and it was great.
Did you have any expectations what that first step off the plane back in the United States would feel like?
Well, we had heard a little bit about some, you know, a lot of protesting was starting to go on, and you know, by the time I was leaving, it was, you know, the beginning of 1968. And when I had gotten there a year earlier, the war still seemed a little bit patriotic, and people weren't really questioning it as much as they did even a year later. So by the time I left and I was coming home, we had already heard that there was a lot of you know, chaos back home in the colleges, and people protesting the war, etc. So I really didn't know what to expect, except that I had seen a few newspapers with these kinds of things and people talking about it.
I read a book recently called Stolen Valor, and in it really talks about the Vietnam vet and how they didn't get what they probably deserved, or absolutely deserved, when they came home. Did you feel that?
Well, I tell you, I felt that a little while later, after I had been home for a while. You know, even a couple of weeks I had been home. Then I got to see, because I didn't get to see the news every night in Vietnam, but when I got home I would watch the news. And it was also the beginning of the Tet Offensive in early =68. And I started watching how much demonstrating was going on, and I really got the feeling that they really had a thing for us, that were, you know, we were in Vietnam, we were drafted or we joined or whatever, and it felt a little bit like they were pointing the finger at us, and that we were the fault of what was really going on. And it felt a little, I was kind of sad by that, because I felt like, you know, we thought we were doing something good. And it didn't look like they thought that. It looked like they just hated us for what we were doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks a lot for all you guys have done.
Thank you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, in the last 28 years since you were in Vietnam, has there been any incidences that were particularly hard or interesting?
Well, when I first came home, I soon came to California. You know, Vietnam provided me with the idea that I had a lot of self-reliance and I could go wherever I wanted. So I knew somebody out here, and I came out to California. And the first 5, 6, 7 years, I was so happy to be in California that I actually forgot that I had been in Vietnam. People would ask me and I'd go, oh yeah, I forgot I was in Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
I just sort of blocked it out for a while. And then toward the late 70s, I started thinking about it a little more. And in the 80s, you know, some of the films that came out I went to see. And there was one guy named Leslie Smith, and he was a little older than all of us. He was about 24. He was a college graduate. So the difference between 24 and 18 or 19 in Vietnam was quite a lot of difference at that age bracket. And Leslie Smith was somebody who provided me with, he was like a big brother to me. He sort of looked out for me all the time. From my very first day there, he just sort of looked out for me, and he looked out for a few other guys too. I always credit him with being the person that sort of kept me sane. And I felt really fortunate to be rather undamaged by Vietnam in comparison to, you know, other people's experience. During that time of being in California, I kept thinking about where Leslie might be. He came to visit me once in 1970 for about a week, and I could tell that he was having some problems. He was, you know, he would smoke, and he had the shakes, and there were some things going on with him that I could see were not good. But when he left, I didn't see him for quite a, you know, I never saw him again really, but I started thinking about him about 10 years later and wanted to know where he was. So I called information, different cities around the country. And I never could pinpoint exactly what city I thought he lived in until one day, about maybe 1990, 1989, somewhere in there. I found an old box of Vietnam stuff, and there was a notebook in there that he had written his home address in. And there it was, after all this time. I had the address all the time, and there it was. So I called information, got the phone number. It was in Nashville, Tennessee. And I called the house, and an older lady answered, his mother, I guess. And I said, "Are you Mrs. Smith?" And she goes, "Yes." And I said, "Well, Mrs. Smith, my name's Doug Dobransky, and I was Leslie's. I was Leslie's best friend in Vietnam, and I wonder if you could tell me where he might be." And she said to me, "Well, I'm sorry to have to tell you, but my Leslie killed himself." So right then, for me, you know, it sort of just happened right then. And I was, it really took me a while to get my, excuse me, but it took me a little while to get my head together on it. And, you know, her and I talked for a long time, and I had sent her some letters, and I told her that he was somebody that really made my life better in Vietnam. So I was just very shocked by what she said. And as you can see, still to this day, it really is a hard thing for me to say. So I wrote her a letter. I wrote her numbers of letters, and I told her that, you know, he had looked out for a lot of people, and he was responsible for me and a lot of other guys to be safer than we might have been. So I just felt like I needed to let her know that.
So probably the hardest question I want to ask you, especially after that, is are you glad you served?
Well, I consider my, you know, I can only speak for myself, of course, and my own experience. Everybody has a little different experience on Vietnam. But whatever politically happened about Vietnam wasn't really my business. I didn't have anything to do with that. I felt like I came from a military type of family, and that we had a lot of respect for anybody who serves in the military has, you know, done a great sacrifice and, you know, risk their own safety. And I think that I have fixed it in my own mind that my service was something I'm very proud of. And I think that it served me very well. It's one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. So I may be one of the minority about this, but I think my time in Vietnam was something that is priceless, really. And I'm really fortunate to have had the opportunity to know what that all was. If Vietnam did teach us at least one thing, it was that we should treat our military personnel with respect, and as the old saying is, freedom isn't free. So somebody's doing the job, and as long as they're doing the job, at least I think we have learned a little better as a society that we don't necessarily put blame or point fingers at the people that are actually doing the duty. We might be better question some of our policymakers.
So what are you doing now?
Actually, for the last 25 or 26 years, I've been a photographer in Hollywood. I shoot entertainment and advertising and some CD covers once in a while, and product and people in general. So I've been doing this for about 25 years.
Would it surprise you to know that many of the vets that I've spoken to that have come home from the recent wars feel guilty that you as a Vietnam vet were treated that way when now today it's seemingly that they're treated better?
It's kind of a nice thing to hear, actually, but when I look at them, I feel guilty because at least one of the benefits that we had in Vietnam is that we knew a time frame that we had, that we would get there and about when we would leave. So 12 months was the general tour in Vietnam. But I see these kids in Iraq right now serving 1, 2, 3, 4 tours, and they have no idea when they're coming out. And that, to me, is the most distressing of the whole thing, because I know what it might feel like to be stuck somewhere and not exactly know when at least you're gonna get out. You can set your emotional self to a certain time frame and say, look, if I last another 3 or 4 or 5 months, I get to go home. But this situation with regard to their time in the country over there is just really distressing to me. If Vietnam did teach us at least one thing, it was that we should treat our military personnel with respect and love.
Tonight I'll sing my songs again, I'll play the game and pretend. But all my words come back to me in shades of mediocrity, like emptiness and harmony. I need someone to comfort me. Homeward bound, I wish I was homeward bound. Home, where my thoughts escaping. Home, where my music's playing. Home, where my love lies waiting silently for me. Silently for me.
If you're a vet or have a vet in your life that has a story about coming home, please write to me at juliemichaels.com. I'd love to tell your story. Thanks again for joining us.